All right, folks, what's up? Today is the 21st of December, 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, a clothing company that is so much more than just a clothing company. We address the human body. We come at it from the skeletal system because it's not about the fat content that comes and goes. It's not about the muscle mass that also comes and goes. But the body is just about having a neutral position in the skeletal system, and from there, everything can go where it goes on both ends, wherever the body has its rotations or its ranges of motion. Now, we are called In The Image Clothing Company because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. So the things that I discuss can apply to somebody over on the other side of our earth, and I've never met them. I've never seen them. I've never addressed their body and their musculature or their positions of their bones, and I don't know what they've been through in their past and their own personal lives, but I do know that clothing designs are universal across the world because we have the potential to get clothing to anywhere on the earth nowadays. And I do know that patternings from living in the same modern man-made 2024 that people get into are the same across the globe. And so what we discuss here is universal truth that applies to everybody, and the degree just might vary very slightly, but it really does. Everything we discuss here applies to everybody, give or take, right? I mean, there could be a thing or two that we discuss that maybe doesn't apply to certain people, but we do discuss things that apply to everybody, right? So we address the body, we allow it to work. We do that mostly through clothing because it's the only thing placed physically on us at all times. If you think about the body just being a machine going through life, if it wasn't restricted, like think about animals, they don't have anything restricting them. But human beings, we put things on us, external things that we put together, like this shirt, like these pants, any undergarments that we wear underneath that, our shoes, this hat, is all something that we've placed onto us that's foreign essentially to our bodies. So the body only works how it does, and it just has to be able to do that. So clothing, if it's not centered, then our natural center, living on this earth with gravity just pulling us straight down from our sternum and the spine and the nose being our center, we have to operate out of there because we have two sides of the body. Now, you might have a little bit different body, deformities, surgeries, amputations, whatever could happen to you that's different. That happens. We address that if and when, but we gotta allow our bodies to work. The key word's always allow, and we do that mostly through clothing. We also discuss that we live, like I said, in this modern, flat, man-made 2024, and our hands are round, and our feet love texture, and our floorings are flat, our countertops are flat. The things that we're holding in our hands so often are flat. So we address these chronic patternings that we get into, and we just allow the body to work and get out of these patternings. So clothing for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, if you are tall or short or skinny or fat. The skeletal system's connections needs to be where they need to be. Clothing needs to sit here. The pants need to be entirely above the hips, so the hips can just open and just work and be unrestricted, and then slightly higher in the front than in the rear, because our core has to stay activated always. It would always naturally be activated. There's no exercises to do in order for it to do what it was designed to, but people are living life with their core not able to even activate, and it should never be deactivated. So in order for these muscles to contract to activate, the pant waistline just has to be accommodating for that. Now, our shirts or the tops, whatever it is that we're wearing on our upper bodies, the seams on top of our shoulders need to be behind that little bone right there. That's the other end of the collarbone, because that just allows them to be neutral, the shoulders. It allows the shoulders to be neutral, which allows the hands, which are essentially the shoulders, to be neutral as well. But really, when I say hands to be neutral, I mean wrists. So the body just needs to be neutral, and then it goes out of that position to do anything that it needs to, but then it always comes back to its foundational neutral position. The seams at the edges of the shoulders need to be as close as we can get them. Where are they? Oh, right, right at the very edges of our shoulders, just somewhere right next to the edges of your shoulders, just because that's where your shoulder works. So, all right, two prerequisites that I've had just to allow the body to have a chance to operate natural, and then we get into depth from there with discussing a lot of little modifications and a lot of things that are really altering the body. But first one is to lace the shoes that we wear with the technique that we use for In The Image Clothing Company, and we have like ways of showing that where you find us online. And that technique, all it does is allow your foot to be unaltered. Any other thing you could possibly choose to do, combination wise with tying or lacing of your shoes, will alter your feet. Really huge is to tie your shoes evenly over toward the inside. We need an even foundation to travel up the rest of our bodies. Now the second prerequisite is to remove all tags from all clothing, inside clothing. If there's a tag placed, it's causing a gap that's altering the way that your bones are going to sit. It's altering the way that your muscles are going to be able to activate to move those bones, and it's just really affecting your body's natural workings, and that does include within the shoes. There's almost always a tag within shoes. Usually it's in the tongues, and they're kind of hard to get off because they heat shrink them on. If you take a pair of scissors or a knife and just take the tag and put slits into it, just so that there's some texture. This is the top of my foot, this is my ankle, and this is my shin. If there's texture there, the ankle can dorsiflex, the toes can come up. But if it's really slippery, they're just not going to be able to, and they're going to be very, very much restricted and inhibited. And like we were talking about with the shoe lacing, that's our foundation. Our feet have to be unaltered for the rest of our body to even have a chance. Okay, so what I'm going to just discuss within this video, the point of this video, the magnitude of this video, what I'm going to mention right now is huge. It's going to be a massive video. This is a video titled Patternings versus Injury. Injury versus patternings. Here's the thing. At In The Image Clothing Company, that's what we're always doing. When we say we're allowing the body to work, what we have to do in order for that to happen is get out of these chronic patternings. We're not ever doing things here at our company, at our community that is In The Image Clothing Company, to the body. We're just doing it on the back end. We're showing and sharing truth that we get into these chronic patternings, and they're universal because of the things I was discussing at the beginning. And so we need to be able to allow our bodies to get out of them. And I'm going to mention a couple patternings, and then we'll get into some stuff. A patterning from tying your shoes unevenly for X amount of who knows how many years. Things like the dreaded collar seam that we discussed this within t-shirts, and we have videos about the dreaded collar seam. Things like zippers, how they have to interlock like this, either this way or this way, where one's on top. Things like drawstrings and tying them unevenly toward one side or the other side for years at a time. Things like pant cuffs being uneven lengths and sitting more heavily on one foot than the other, so you can't dorsiflex one foot as much as the other foot. Things like oversized clothing to where it's sitting off your body and just changing the rotations of everything and the elevations of things, the activations of like your traps when it comes to an oversized shirt, or if it's sitting on your arms, the way that your arms will bend, or on your wrists, if they're too long, the way that your wrists will bend. And going through your entire life with something that imbalanced creates a patterning. So things like that, and then just a lot of stuff we discuss, that is a lot of the things that we do discuss, but then anything else that we discuss is what I mean. They could be possibly imbalanced within clothing, and then years and years within that to create a patterning. So a patterning within the body, let me give a little like description of that. If your muscles are going to work like this, evenly hinging and doing this throughout your entire life, but like I was saying, my shirt, let's say, is a little bit too big, and it's going to always slip off to one side because we're dominant on one side, first of all, and then the dreaded collar seam will do that, and we discussed that in depth within our content on the dreaded collar seam. As of today's date, there's 3 videos about it. This shirt actually has it, and I've done the modification that I found to do. So if you're wearing a shirt and it's sitting a little bit more on one of your arms here than on the other, and you can't quite bend that arm, look what my hips will do. So now the entire time you go through life, you're like this rather than evenly like this, or whatever way it is and whatever thing it is. The point with describing what patternings are is anything that's going to restrict your body. If it's like that day after day after day after day, your body's trying its best to just continue to work, but it's getting trained to work around something that it should never have to. And that just changes the body's only natural workings. The body only does what it does. It has to work as a whole, or else something else and really many things within it have to compensate, because it all has to go where any of it goes. I mean, you don't like separate part of your body and just let it do something different than the rest of you. It's all connected, so it has to work together. Now, after years of patterning, the body can get so damaged to where the reason I titled this Injuries versus Patternings, or Pattern versus Injury, whatever way you want to look at it, it's the same thing. The reason I titled that way, the reason I want to focus on comparing the two, is because there's so much that we do to address the body after having an injury happen. But an injury is nowhere near as damaging to the body as a patterning. Because if I were to break my arm and, like, let's say entirely just like broke the bones in my arm, just clean in half, and they lined them back up and they put a cast on it, like splinted it up really well so it's fixed into place, and now I'm just like letting it sit there and heal. It will heal between like a month or two, give or take. That will basically completely heal. And now you've gone a month or two with this problem, if you will. But a patterning that we can get into and be in for, like tying shoes unevenly, is something I did since I started tying shoes till I was 24 years old. So that's right around 20 years of my foundation of my body being altered, traveling up the entirety of everything that my body is. Every muscle from there up can only activate in the position it's allowed to, while being pulled in an unnatural position from a rope at the shoes. And that's every single day, every second that you have shoes on. So an injury will heal, and it'll heal quick. And anything that it's affecting within the rest of the body, that's only being affected through the amount of time that the injury's healing. Like a couple months is really, it's rare for injuries to take, I mean, some things can take 6 months to a year, but it's very rare for injuries to take more than that to heal. But these patternings are things that some people are in for 60 plus years. I mean, it could be any amount of years. Like, I mean, you start tying your shoes, that's one of the biggest ones, is the shoes, because it's the foundation. You start tying your shoes unevenly when you start tying shoes, and now you're 90 years old. It's been 85, 90 years, depending, that you've been in this patterning. So we get chronically shortened muscles. Muscles that are designed to have a full range of motion now only have partial range of motion because they're being restricted by something, like I was saying with the sleeve on the arm here. And this will happen anywhere within the body, and it's something that everything will work around. So our skin, for example, is very stretchy. Skin is stretchy. If it wasn't, then I wouldn't be able to bend my wrist. If you look closely at the back of your wrist and bend it, this skin is having to stretch, or else you couldn't bend your wrist because the skin's encapsulating everything, so it would be like getting stuck. And that's in every part of your body. So things like anything that's going to cause one of your shoulders to be lower than the other, and that's so hugely common. Drawstrings, shoelacing, oversized clothing, just because it's going to sit off-centered. It's so common. 85%, give or take, of the population of the earth are right-handed. So common for you to look around, and if you haven't noticed this, you can. Look at people and you'll see their right shoulder, and almost everything they do is a little bit lower than their left. The dreaded color seam is huge when it comes to that. It's huge when it comes to everything within the body. But people will be walking around, and this is how a lot of people look. is a little bit to the right, head's tilted to the right, right shoulder's more forward, externally rotated, and at the shoulder capsule, and right foot's out a little bit, pelvis is twisted this way a little bit, this side is shortened a little bit more than this side on the back, really that lat, that big muscle coming down. And this is the patterning that we're talking about. This is the patterning that you don't have to believe me on. I always say, don't believe me. Please don't believe me. Please don't. But you can walk around and see this within your own life. And the things we show at In The Image Clothing Company are the ways to get out of these patternings and the things to address that are actually causing the patternings. So, clothing, right? That's what I mean. That's why we are the company that we are. So, you'll see that patterning. You can walk around and see it. You can see it in little children, and you can see it as people get older. Usually it gets deeper ingrained, just because, like I'm saying, more time within the patterning. But when you're in that position, you have muscles that have gone years without having their full range of motion. Like the hip flexors extend into their full range of motion. The lat will reach into its full range of motion. Everything within the body has its full ranges of motion. Every hinge joint, every rotation, every muscle's ability to elongate or contract, every part of the body. And it just has to be allowed to do that. So after years of not being, it will get chronically short. So like I was saying with the skin, if one of your shoulders for most all of your life, or just years, or even just months, or however long it is, but then the longer it is, the deeper ingrained, like shoulders where one's lower than the other, all the skin from like the top of your shoulder to your pelvis, this is all shortened back here. And so now trying to really be able to reach, it's not only your muscles that have been chronically shortened, but it's your skin. And then where your muscles connect into bones is called insertions. So a muscle has to insert somewhere and insert somewhere else to pull two things together to work. And every single muscle does that. Unless there's something that doesn't within the body, like very specific. But that's how a muscle works, is it contracts to bring something closer to something else. So all the muscles have been chronically shortened, but the insertion, where it actually connects, can actually move a little bit, like get a little bit too bound up, kind of end up in a position that's not normal, because things will track uneven. Like the knees, they just want to bend straight. And if you're having things like discrepancy within shoelacing for years, your knees won't be bending straight. So then the muscles that like hinge the knee, if it's going to come down and connect like here and hinge like this, but the knee for so long is like out here, now the insertion will kind of like move a little bit because it's having to pull on the joint, but the joint's not in its normal position. So the insertion's having to like kind of make up for the imbalance. So this happens within everything. It happens within the muscles of your face. It happens within your ears. It happens within the cartilage within your nose. It happens all throughout the body. And then within the inner workings of our body, we have so many organs, and they all just sit. I mean, they're just in our body. Our body's just like this capsule that our organs are within, and they all have to do their function. We have our digestive system, our respiratory system, the endocrine system. You can mention any system within the body, just everything that it does. And it all has to be able to, like the heart and the circulatory system, the ways that the veins can travel through the body. If you look, your veins go over and through joints, and if the joint's altered, the blood flow will be as well. So the body is something that just will work unless altered. I say this phrase all the time. There's no reason the body wouldn't work unless there was a reason that it couldn't. And that could be anything. But we have to address it if we can. or else it will just continue to be inhibited. So the body is not just about stretching, it's not just about mobility work, it's not about getting massages, it's not about trying to work out. I always say, and I will always say, as the founder of this company, In The Image Clothing Company, we do not have to stretch. The body's just given ranges of motion, and it has those. All you're doing when you're stretching is stretching into the range of motion that's already there. The only reason it isn't allowed to be as full as it is because something's restricting it, and that's what we address. So we don't have to work out either, because our bodies are just a mechanical machine. You'll see so many videos for In The Image Clothing Company titled How Blank, usually an item of clothing, affects body mechanics. That's how I approach it, is body mechanics. The body's like it's like building a robot, and there's just hinges and things that it can do. That's the same thing with the body. It's just a machine. It just has operation that it would, and it will just do all that it needs to do to get us through this world on this earth and do the functions and things we need to, unless there's a reason it's restricted. So we just need to allow our bodies to get back to their natural workings. And sometimes that takes a little bit on our end, as far as not just stopping the restriction, but I talk about one-time releases. We shouldn't have to do anything again once it's been released, but after something being bound up for so many years, it needs to be able to be released. And sometimes that almost requires, like, your own hands is really all I've ever said, all we probably will ever say to use, but to like release scar tissue, right? If the body needs to kind of like stabilize when the muscles aren't able to, then it'll create scar tissue in certain places. Like when you get cut and it heals up and the tissue just is different than the rest of the body. Well, if your body is in a normal working order, then the tissue is just how it is. But if it's altered, there's tissue that's kind of binding up to just really try to work when it's not being allowed to. So, okay, this is what we do here. This is In The Image Clothing Company. We don't ever tell people to do anything to get their body to work. The key word is always allow. We've been given this. We didn't design this. We didn't choose this. Our God created this, and He made it do what it does. We're not telling our hearts to beat X amount of times per minute. We're not reminding ourselves to breathe and reminding our lungs to expand. We don't tell our bodies to heal themselves after they get scraped and maybe start bleeding. We don't do the things that our bodies are doing. Our bodies are doing those things. Our God is orchestrating everything that happens here in our existence for us to experience. And we just need to not restrict our bodies from doing what they will do, and they will do it. So, I have an immense understanding of the natural workings of the human body. It's all out of personal experience. It's all out of my own journey, getting my body to its current state, getting out of these patternings myself, learning through a lot of prayer and a lot of trying things within clothing, what it really is within clothing that's causing these imbalances. And that it really is clothing that's causing these imbalances. So, as I always will say, do not believe my words. We discuss things here to where I don't want you to believe me, but if you try the things that we show, if you watch our videos or hear about In The Image Clothing Company and see what we're talking about and the imbalances within clothing, you can go within your own closet, your own wardrobe, your own drawers, wherever you keep your clothing, and you can see the things that we're talking about, and then you can try these simple modifications that up until today's date, and I don't foresee it changing, all it has taken is one pair of scissors to do all the modifications that we have shown. You can do them for yourself and you will see that they work. We're not pushing anything. We don't have opinions here. We don't have beliefs here. We don't try to get anybody on board with something besides truth. We're just here to help people's bodies work, and we're doing that. And I was the pioneer of this, and I am the proof of it, just because my body has changed. And I haven't done exercises. And it's not conditional the way that exercises are, as if when you stop the exercises, your body doesn't have those effects of what those are doing anymore. Getting out of these patternings, all we're doing is letting our bodies do easier what they will do without anything telling them what to do. And so it's irreversible. You get out of the patternings and your body will always work that well, unless there's an injury or unless you do another thing to get into another patterning. So this is truth. This is all we actually need in the physical function sense to allow our bodies to work. It really is. And I don't want to use the word prove, but we prove that, right? Meaning it will prove itself to you. So we are in the Image Clothing Company. We will have clothing available so that this is allowed to happen, this allowing of the body's function. Because every item of clothing that I have purchased, I have had to do some sort of modification to in some degree, just to allow it to not alter the natural workings. And that could be something as simple as removing a tag, or something very, very small, even like a tagless t-shirt that comes but it has the dreaded collar seam, and just doing the modification. And it is a really small, simple thing, but we don't want to have to do these modifications if we don't. So that's what our clothing will allow to happen. It will allow the body to stay centered by it itself being centered. And it will have the intent to sit where I discussed at the beginning that clothing will. We can't guarantee that no matter who you are, if you purchase an item of clothing from In The Image Clothing Company, it's going to fit you just ideal, because especially if you're purchasing it online and you don't get to try it on first, right? But our intent will be to have it sit, like I said, I'm going to mention it one more time just to give some context for our clothing. Pants will always be entirely above the hips. They will sit to where they're slightly higher in the front than the rear to keep that core activated. And the tops will sit where the shoulder seams are behind the little bone, that's the collarbone, and then right at the edges of the shoulder. Now, I've said this, I will always say this. Please, if you are planning to purchase In The Image Clothing Company clothing to fit you oversized for fashion reasons, do not purchase it in those cases. Only buy clothing ever from In The Image Clothing Company if you try to actually get it in a size that fits you. Because that is our company, that is our brand, if you will. That's the reason we have what we have here, is to let the body work. And that will not happen if your clothing is oversized. So we have 3 avenues of our company. This main side where we discuss clothing, we discuss the anatomy of the human body, and we talk about the relationship between those 2 things. Then we have over here, 1/3 of our company is In The Image Clothing Company podcast. And we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I love that. It's a beautiful place for us to stay centered, to remember why we're doing what we're doing, how we're allowed to do it, and to just deepen those of us on the actual podcast episodes, and then anybody who has the potential to hear it, the understandings that we have on the gospel. And then we also have In The Image Clothing Company music as well. And that is going to be a lot of fun music stuff. I actually just got a guitar 2 days ago, and so it's already been really fun, and it will just continue to grow in whatever direction that does. So as I've been saying lately, if you'd like to kind of stop in every now and then, or if you want to just kind of stay up to date with what we do, either way, this is what we are, and this is how we always will be, centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ, allowing the body to work through clothing and getting out of patternings and just speaking truth. To the best of our abilities, we are all equally sinful. We all mess up. And sometimes we might be saying something and either our delivery wasn't quite how it maybe should have been or most ideal for people to receive it, but we were still saying something that was correct. Or sometimes we might just say stuff wrong. But we are human beings and we all mess up. So we are In The Image Clothing Company. like I said, today's date is the 17th, except that's not what I said, because that's not the date. It's the 21st of December, 2024. Yes, my name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. Check us out. The podcast is any place that you can find your podcasts. I mean, it's not placed everywhere that you could place a podcast, but I mean, go where you find your podcasts. You can find us somewhere online. And the music side of things, you'll be able to find. Just look up In The Image Clothing Company music, and then here we are. We do have our official domain, InTheImageClothingCompany.com. As simple as it could be. If you know our company name, that's our domain. So, yes, that's where you will go to buy the clothing. That's where we will kind of bring everything back to and give at least like links and ways to get to everything from our main website. So, thank you. I'm excited because it's like I'm at a point now where we have such a foundation here to where everything's kind of like set into place, and now it's just about growing as we do, and for the purpose of spreading the gospel and letting our bodies work. So, okay, thank you.